Hi everyone and welcome back to Stephan Livera podcast brought to you by Bold. For American listeners, you can buy Bitcoin over at Bold for the industry's lowest fees and you can earn the highest Bitcoin back rewards with the Bold debit card. Now, joining me on the show today is Albert Boo. Albert is the founder and CEO of Neutron Pay. Welcome to the show, Albert.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Albert, I know you've been working on Neutron Pay and I guess Canada-based, but also serving Vietnam. And I know in earlier years, you were very much on the Lightning focus, payments focus of things. Do you want to just give us a bit of an overview? Where is Neutron Pay at nowadays, or Neutron at nowadays?
Yeah. So we rebranded to Neutron. We just cut off Pay to make it a little bit easier. So we're still focused on Bitcoin and Lightning. We just do have off-ramp payouts that we supported before, which is pretty much all of Southeast Asia, a little bit of Northern Asia. So we still do have a core focus on Bitcoin. We've kind of evolved a little bit more with a couple more products. Before we were just doing payments, payouts with Bitcoin to payout, and now we did a mobile app, and now we have a product that's Lend that has come out, obviously Bitcoin collateral for USDT. And then we also built out a set of APIs for businesses to easily integrate into the Lightning Network. So that's kind of our suite of products now.
Gotcha. And I know in earlier years you were talking about how, as an example, in Vietnam, some of the regulations were that, you know, the local government and regulators wanted payments to be in VND, but you had to sort of set it up so that when people do Bitcoin payments, maybe on the front end to the end user, they can pay, you know, Lightning, but actually in the back end, it needs to turn into VND. So can you maybe elaborate a bit on that and how has that view shifted, if at all?
Yeah, no, I think that's the way we approached it before, because when we came here, obviously Bitcoin was a very, very bad word for a lot of people here. Even though Vietnam is one of the top 3 countries for Bitcoin uses on chain, and you can see that on chain analysis. It's been like that ever since even before COVID, for about 3 or 4 years. So when we came here and I was obviously trying to pitch the Lightning stuff, that was very like, no. So we kind of thought about a different approach. So when I was here, I said, well, if the local merchants were able to get VND, but they were receiving it as a different payment, I don't think that would be a huge issue. And so talking with our legal from this side of the world, they said, that is a little bit cheeky, but it does follow the rules of having the actual currency being settled in VND. And so receiving it as whatever it is, because some people do receive US dollars here. And so they'll take the US dollars, obviously. So that's not allowed, but people do that here. So just having Bitcoin and then us instantly, converting it into VND seemed like a more reasonable play. And once we did that, a lot more people started using it, picking up, understanding it. Tourism, a lot of expats here in Vietnam are from like the US, UK, Australia, all over the world. And so when they start using that, and then there's a QR code that we can kind of show, they just hit the Lightning QR code, they pay it, it comes back with obviously the stats on the other side, but the merchant will get exactly what they're looking for. In VND, 150,000 VND is about less than $10 around there. So they would get that actual 150 VND for, say, like a banh mi or something like that, and everyone's happy in the transactions. So that really helped a lot with kind of a lot of the pickup in Vietnam and kind of an understanding of the Lightning and why they would say, okay, I would accept this payment option, because a lot of the people just thought it would be, I would just get Bitcoin at the end of the day, and we kind of had to change that a lot, that narrative here, where they could receive something else but get VND at the end.
Gotcha. And would you say that's still true nowadays, or is it actually changing a bit now? That, has the regulation and the attitude, has that shifted, or is it still that mindset?
No, the attitude shifts quite a bit. So I don't know if you know, just as of this year in July, Vietnam actually officially passed into law. They call it, crypto blockchain, but it's Bitcoin and everything else that's actually accepted. So that was officially signed into legislation on July 1st.
I might have seen like a news article, but I forgot it. Can you give us the details on that, just for listeners?
Yeah, so now they're really opening up Vietnam to what they call as like crypto blockchain, right? But we just call it like Bitcoin and everything else. And so that's allowed for trading, exchange, payments, pretty much everything under the umbrella that digital assets that they would say would do. I think I got kicked off. Hello? Hello?
Sorry, Albert, I lost you there. Could you
Yeah.
just outline? You were just outlining the change in the regulate or the new law around what was, yeah, I guess from the government perspective, they're calling it crypto blockchain, but you're saying more like Bitcoin.
Yeah. So they came back and they said the regulation for moving forward with like crypto and blockchain, but we'll call it Bitcoin. They're more open to it now. So they
I
see that
see.
they're allowing for payments, exchanges, broker services you want to do if you have a license. So pretty much everything under the umbrella under blockchain services you're allowed to do into Vietnam. That starts as of January 2026. But from now until January 2026, there is something that's called a sandbox. And there's certain participants that are allowed to get early access, which is like the banks, larger payment financial institutions, mobile apps, and
And
kind
are
of
you guys in that sandbox?
some things I can say yes, because we have to partner up with pretty much a bank. And so we are kind of in the race with a partnership with a bank to allow to start servicing legally more services and functions within the space. But yeah, we're looking to partner with a bank to be able to be one of the first to service. Yes.
Excellent. And so, as you said, what exactly is on offer here? So, I think you were outlining a bit like, are we talking payments? Are we talking transactional account services? Are we talking borrowing against Bitcoin and lending? What is the government, let's say, permitting now, or giving a regulatory allowance for?
Yeah, so for now, it looks like they're going to start with anything that's a broker exchange along
Gotcha.
with payments. So those are probably the first two categories that they're going to start with. As the years go on, they do have other financial products that they are aware of, especially like the lending and everything else like that. But they want to start with those two first to make sure that I guess kind of the locals and everyone understand kind of the use and the purpose of it, and also to make sure that no one's getting scammed, right? Because that's a huge thing that's also here as well, is there's a lot of people that are affected by a lot of the token scams and DeFi stuff that's been pushed around here. And so they're trying to clear that out really quickly with a lot of these brokerages and all these solicited kind of tokens that are coming in. So once that's all cleared out, they want to just start with those two. So anything that's an exchange or a broker or some payments.
I see, yeah. And something I wanted to, you touched on this earlier, and I have heard of this also from talking to other people who are in or around Vietnam, the very high volume that Vietnam has, right? Because it's kind of like, you wouldn't expect that, right? Like, you wouldn't expect that Vietnam is kind of that high in terms of how many people are using it. It makes you wonder why. Do you know why that is?
Yeah, if anyone's been under a country that has a lot of capital flights restrictions, and it was also kind of one of the larger export countries, there's going to be a lot of people that are using alternative methods to get money out or investments out. And so, like a particular example would probably be like China, right? Everyone knows China. If China were to get into Bitcoin, it would be a massive run, right? There's just a lot of money that's been happening there. But that's also because China is a massive export company. Vietnam isn't that size of China, but it is a very upcoming competitor, as you would say,
Yeah.
because a lot of the exports are going to Vietnam, right? A lot of warehousing is being built here as well, and so it's growing very quickly, right? Especially with all the tariffs that are happening. So the Chinese are trying to figure out proxies, and I think people have heard of this before. Trump is taxing Vietnam if they do any more proxies with China, right? So there's a 20% tariff on Vietnam already, and there's going to be a 40% tariff if you're caught doing proxy things, right? So stuff like that cause kind of that investment to come into other vehicles, right, as such as Bitcoin and everything else. And that's why when you see kind of like the on-chain analysis is that ever since it was like I think 2019 to 2023 or 24, Vietnam has always been in the top three of just usage of Bitcoin or other blockchains. And so it's very well versed here. It's just kind of in the hush hush kind of gray area, but people do use it. And so that's why Vietnam's kind of wanting to turn their kind of tough stance and open that up for the locals here.
Sure. Okay, interesting. And so, are you able to say, is it like the users of Bitcoin and maybe stablecoin stuff in Vietnam? Are we talking here like entrepreneurs and investors coming from outside Vietnam to set up businesses and then take profits out using Bitcoin or stables? Or are we talking like B2B use of this thing? Are you able to explain that, or do you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, right? So there's a big manufacturing hub here, right? I think everyone knows, right? So a lot of
Yeah.
the manufacturing is coming here. And so it's sometimes a lot of people to get around the taxes and the capital control flights here. Um, they'll go through digital assets, right? They'll go through Bitcoin or stablecoin. And so the government has recognized that, and they know that they're losing a lot of taxes and fees and everything else like that because of the hard stance that Vietnam had before, right? Now that it's cleared, everyone's kind of easing up. But yeah, because of that, Vietnam's finally looked at it and said, hey, we're losing a lot of tax because of what we're doing. Because if you are a bigger business in Vietnam, you're allowed to move money out. It's just a lot of paperwork. So it's very tedious. You got to go do a form, you got to file it into the bank. The bank then goes and gives it to the SBV. SBV is a state bank of Vietnam. They come back within anywhere from 3 to 5 days with an approval or a denial. So a lot of people say, well, that's too long. I need to go and move stuff back, right? So a lot of Japanese, Koreans, and Chinese, have a lot of businesses here. So they need that money back into their countries to go obviously buy supplies and kind of get their profits and investments back. And so with kind of the stable coins that came into place, that kind of went rampant, and Bitcoin went rapid probably for those last 4 or 5 years. And now they're trying to slow that down to say, okay, we'll ease up on this kind of hard stance and we'll collect the taxes now in the proper way.
It's really fascinating to see how it's like around the world, people have different uses. Now, in much of the, let's say, Western TradFi world, it's all about Bitcoin as your kind of long-term store of value, and that's a big narrative. And here, what we're seeing is more like people are using it as like a way to get around things. And I presume a lot of that is stablecoin as well. And so I guess stablecoin volumes are also very high there.
Oh yeah, very high. I think it's just because, Vietnam has always been very had close relationships with the US. And so a lot of the US dollar is still used here as well. And so kind of stable coins and US dollar, one and a one. But there is a lot of usage for Bitcoin too as well that people don't talk about. But I think that's because that's more of a tool to be used because a lot of people that do use it look at it as like an edge, right? So like if I have an edge, I don't need to tell the next competitor that I'm using this edge because I'd rather use them something else, right? And so actually I call it, maybe it's a bad term, but the smarter money that's in Vietnam already knows exactly kind of the inflation, the money printing. They understand like the kind of business cycles that they have to go through, the fees, the taxes, the capital controls. So they look at Bitcoin as a flight for them, right? That is, it's a safe asset, nothing can get touched. Vietnam's really known for a lot of war, right? So a lot of people are scared of losing money and their assets. And so they always trying to find a specific way to make sure that they're holding those assets, right? And Vietnam itself is pretty much looking at that as well because, just I don't know if you guys heard, like in the last 2 weeks, there was like a Thailand and Cambodia war, right? That has nothing really to do with us, but for some reason, because of, I guess, kind of just trauma in a way, it's like, will we be pulled into it? Will someone ask us for their support, right? So that's kind of led to a lot of people using kind of Bitcoin. They understand they can use stablecoins as well because it's more of a stable, there's no volatility. But also a lot of people understand here that when you have USDT, there's also a particular point where your assets can get frozen, right? They've seen it, the internet's there, X is there. It's very well known. It's just that you have two groups. You have one group that just understands Bitcoin more and feels more comfortable that way. And then you have another group that just understands stablecoins and are fine with say someone freezing their accounts with that type of abilities.
Gotcha. And as everybody knows, right, these stablecoins are obviously not intended to be as censorship resistant as Bitcoin. It's quite public that, when there's like a very public theft, Paolo or some of the stablecoin guys will sort of publicly say, hey, we heard about this theft, we've frozen these coins or we've invalidated them somehow, this kind of thing. And obviously with Bitcoin, it's a different story. And so it's interesting to see that. So would you say, in terms of Vietnamese entrepreneurial and investor circles, kind of smart money, as you were saying, you would say they're pretty Bitcoin and stablecoin savvy, right? Like if you were to talk to like entrepreneur network, like high level entrepreneur networking groups and hanging out with those guys, they would all be pretty Bitcoin savvy, at least to the level where they might use Bitcoin.
Yeah, Yeah, like I would say they wouldn't be too hardcore. Like if you were saying, "Hey, do you know how to use a cold card and air gap it?" That'd probably be out of the
Beyond them,
conversation.
yeah,
But
of course, yeah.
yeah,
They're not going to be
but
like, oh,
general,
this is what Taproot and script path. No,
yeah,
they're going to be like, I use Bitcoin to buy and sell things or to earn and spend.
yeah, correct. Yeah. So the general use case of like being able to use it, get it, store it, send it somewhere, receiving it, kind of all the above, right, for general use. But yeah, they would understand kind of the basis of it and how to get it. Yes.
Yeah, that's really interesting to see, like just kind of these cultural shifts over time and what is becoming popular, what is becoming, understood, right? Because obviously you and I and kind of, listeners of this show, we're kind of all, hardcore maxis.
Mhm.
So for us, it's like, yes, this is,
Yeah.
this is my jam, but
Yeah.
we're sort of waiting for the rest of the world to wake up to what we've been on for
Yeah.
a while, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you're doing on the Neutron side of things for businesses then. Like we're talking about businesses. I know you mentioned a Neutron API. So what exactly is the API offering there?
Yeah, so the APIs, we changed our focus a little bit, right? Because before we were just payments and kind of like a merchant provider. So we had like a gateway. So we were kind of like BTC Pay, but more of like a custodial side, right? So we provide like an invoice and you could pay it in. So we moved away from that because we just thought the merchant side was a little bit tougher to do. And obviously the merchant always came back and said, where's the users? And so if the merchants didn't see any volume or any merchants, they would just shut off the actual kind of gateway. So now we moved over to more of just providing kind of a product suite to more of like the businesses and kind of more institutional side.
Gotcha. But
Um,
what's included in that product suite?
yeah, so that product suite is everything, pretty much just anything that we can service on the Bitcoin side. So pretty much on-chain, Lightning. We push Lightning pretty heavily. So we say you can do kind of like a wallet service. So we would go to any of the mobile apps within the country or payment providers or any type of businesses that just want to be able to accept Lightning or send it. And so that would be able to have them go and integrate kind of the whole suite of products that we would have. So obviously like Lightning, the on-chain stuff, we were going to put in some of the Taproot stuff, but we thought that was a little bit too advanced. And we just said, hey, how about you just kind of do these two products first? Lightning would probably be the biggest thing for instant, obviously, settlement. And it allows them to pretty much interconnect with the businesses that are globally, right? So this isn't really a play for internally for Vietnam. It's more or less for the businesses that are here that have connections globally to be able to accept the Lightning aspect of it. So being able to buy from, like, say, a Cash App user. And now they can buy stuff from, like, say, Square terminals that have opened up, right? So what I mean by that is we would go to an app provider, they would plug in our APIs, they now have a Lightning wallet. So now they have VND, but they also have a Lightning wallet that they can use. They can convert the VND into obviously
I see.
BTC.
So it's like let's say a custodial white label wallet sort of service.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So because we're full custodial, right? We're trying to move to non-custodial, but we think that the custodial route is better to get users on board and businesses on board. And so the quick example of the reason why we would go to like this mobile app and do that is because now it gives that mobile app what I call like wings or legs. So now a person can go and say, I have this Vietnamese app. There's a big one that we're trying to get to as well. It's called Momo. And Momo is like a kind of a version of like Cash App, right? So really quick is what Momo can do now is because it was stuck locally in Vietnam because it just services VND and locally. But if they were to integrate our APIs and nodule, now they have a Lightning wallet integration. They can now fly over to the US and scan any QR code, obviously from Square or Cash App, and it would take the VND dollars out of their balance, shoot it over Lightning Network, and then the person on their side, say a Cash or Cash App, would be able to get US dollars. Everyone in both parties are happy. No one really cares what's in the middle. They just know that they're able to go and say, I'm using VND in the US, but the actual receiver is getting US dollars.
Interesting. Okay, and so are you seeing that? So talk to me about the end user in that scenario. Are we thinking that is like a retail end user, like man on the street, or are we saying that's like a B2B kind of use case? That's like a businessman in Vietnam who wants to buy something from the US. Like, what's the use there?
Yeah, I would say probably both because they're pretty similar, right? So we'd categorize it both where one is kind of like a global traveler, where that could be a retail person. Maybe they're just visiting friends and family, but also could be also a businessman too, right? Because a lot of the products that are being sold in Vietnam are also from the US, Europe, or Australia and sold back into Vietnam, right? Vietnam's products are a lot of them come from China. So it's a lot of like the Temu stuff and the Shopee stuff. It's
Like
really cheap
textile
stuff.
stuff and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's very kind of cheap and it's not really high quality stuff. Even though some of the stuff is made in China, but they feel that the brands that are overseas bring more kind of value, right? And they're actually more kind of looked after and kind of screened for any type of like, regardless if it's quality of clothes or products that they're buying that are like consumption, food, or anything like that. So that business side could also be the same thing. Like a business guy could go over to the United States and say, I want to buy a bunch of crates or something like that from the US and bring that over to Vietnam to resell. And so having that ability to having that mobile app to be able to use, say, Lightning, instead of doing like a Swift or wire transfer, you can actually pay that instantly. So that's why we say it would be from both angles, right? It can be retail or a business guy, because in Vietnam, everyone does everything on their mobile phone. Everything. Like
Gotcha.
there is probably maybe, probably skewing the numbers, but I would say probably maybe 10% people use laptops to do a lot of stuff, but
Right.
everyone
So it's
is
like
using
mobile
mobile
first.
phones.
Yeah.
Yeah, mobile is first, always. You'll see
Yeah.
business people in cafes, meetings, there's no laptops. Everybody has a phone. Everyone is doing something with texting, sending files, sending payments. There's nothing with a laptop. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny because Vietnam grew up with, it did a leapfrog, right? I think I might have mentioned this before in another podcast where it's like in the US and where we're from, right? We went from like, laptops, desktops, dial up, and all that stuff all the way up to mobile phones. Vietnam literally went from dial-up to mobile phones. Like
Yeah.
they
They
didn't
really
have
leapfrogged it.
desktops.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really leapfrogged. So that's why they're very used to
Yeah.
just doing everything
And
in
I'll
on the
point
mobile
out as
phone.
well, I just looked up the median age in Vietnam is 33 years old, right? So
Yes.
we're
Yeah.
talking about like a young population, right? It's not
Yep.
like some of the Western countries where the population is aging.
Hmm.
These are young people on average.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very driven here, right? That's why they see a lot of people are saying Vietnam has a lot of people that like to hustle. It's just because of that average age that you brought up. Is everyone's in that bracket when they're about 30 to 35. They really want to go after something. They want to get their own business. They want to make a lot of money for themselves. Everything's quick, everything's fast. A lot of these people don't even use banks, right? They'll use a lot of online services.
Like neobank crypto
Correct.
services and
Yeah,
things like
yeah,
this. Yeah.
yeah. It'd be like neobanks and crypto services and the mobile wallets. They don't go to actual banks anymore. They feel that it's too slow and cumbersome for the lifestyle that they're doing with their business.
Gotcha. And so then you view Neutron as trying to either become that or sort of plug into that vision. And then on the wallet side, I presume then, are you designing the wallet? Is that for a Vietnamese user or like Vietnamese diaspora or just anyone around the world? Like who is it designed for?
It's pretty much anyone. And I think that's why it's kind of we kind of skewed that a little bit where we thought we were only like in our narrative that we were just only focused on Southeast Asia. We were just doing that on this part of the world because we just feel like there wasn't enough education and people using it here, right? But it is for everyone. It's global, right? Like just like how Bitcoin is, it should be open. It's just that we didn't want to do all the competition in North America, right? Because in Canada, at that time when I was doing it, there wasn't really any need for it, right? There's pretty much stable services there with banking and credit cards and debit. And US is just very competitive. So we would have probably drained a bunch of money just trying to, fight our way to the top. Where in Southeast Asia, there is nobody. I don't think there is still anyone that's doing anything that's lightning based at what we're doing to try to push the envelope in the country and in Southeast Asia. So we're trying to get more businesses, institutions kind of to start using the Lightning Network in a different way, right? Because a lot of people just like to use, like if you hear the narrative a little bit in the US, now it's moving a little bit. But before it was just buy Bitcoin, buy, save, hold it, don't do anything, right? Whereas the narrative, what we're saying in Southeast Asia is you can buy it, save it, but you can also use it, right? A lot of cross-border trade happens with a lot of digital assets, right? Like today, it happens with a lot of stable coins. And now we're trying to push that narrative with Lightning and saying Lightning would also be a better solution for this, right? We're not saying we can displace stable coins, but we say, how about you put it as beside one another? And now you have two options. You can either use stable coins or you can use the Lightning Network.
Yeah. And while we're there, I guess curious to get your take on some of the recent news around things like Taproot Assets Tether or even like the RGB guys. Like there's this effort to quote unquote bring stablecoins back to Bitcoin per se. Like it started on Bitcoin on the Omni layer, then transaction fees went up, and then Tether went to basically a lot of the uses on shit chains, right? Ethereum and Tron and whatever. And now we're starting to see a little bit of liquid Tether. It's growing, but it's still small compared to kind of the Tron and whatever other stuff. How are you seeing that now in terms of quote unquote bringing it back to Bitcoin?
I would say this is still an uphill battle, especially for those kind of side chains.
Yeah.
Like the biggest thing in kind of this side of the world is Tron, right? Tron is just hands down very, very saturated here. Everyone uses a lot of the USDT on Tron. And I think that was just because Tron had obviously a huge advantage, right, with kind of China and, Justin Sun kind of really pushing in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, right, is there was no one pushing that narrative of Bitcoin on this side. It was just all North American and all kind of the Western countries, right? And no one was really focused in Southeast Asia and Northern Asia, like the China area. And I think that's where, Justin Sun really got dominance because he was like, no one's here doing that. I'll just kind of spread Tron, and it just really broke out really further. And I noticed that a lot of stuff is now Tether's trying to do the same thing. They're trying to break into just them saying, hey, just use Tether, all these other blockchains and stuff like that. That's why I say it's a little bit of a tough uphill battle with, like, say, RGB and say Liquid trying to push maybe Tether and use their networks. It's just that everyone's so used to using Tron, and now to get them to move away from that would be a little difficult. I think now, because that we push a lot of the Lightning kind of thing, they've understand like Lightning is a little bit better, and they understand the Bitcoin purpose of it. People use it already, but now they see that the method of it being a little bit quicker, and hopefully with Taproot and supporting Tether, I think that would easily move that narrative over to taking some of that market share away from Tron.
The lead sponsor of this show is Bold, the banking platform designed for Bitcoiners. With the Bold virtual Visa debit card, you earn Bitcoin back on every purchase. The more Bitcoin you buy with Bold, the more sats back you get on the card. Buy $2,500 of Bitcoin and earn 3% sats back. Keep stacking with Bold to earn up to 10% sats back. Bold offers the industry's lowest fees on Bitcoin buys and sells with zero added spreads. When starting out, you can use Bold Wallet, which is managed by the team, but Bold is also supporting self-custody with Bold Vault, a 2 of 3 collaborative custody multisig for zero monthly fees. With Bold, you get your own FDIC-insured checking account to store and send fiat, pay bills, direct deposit your paycheck, and replace your legacy fiat bank. Sign up today and get zero fees on your first $10,000 of Bitcoin buys and $25 of free Bitcoin when you buy $100 of Bitcoin or more. Go to getbold.io. This episode is brought to you by CoinKite, the makers of my favorite Bitcoin hardware wallet, the Cold Card Q. Now, some people think self-custody is too hard, but it's really about taking responsibility for your Bitcoin wealth and understanding that self-custody gives you a true feeling of liberty. The Cold Card Q has a full keyboard and big screen. It's got 2 secure elements and a true air gap, allowing you to go fully air-gapped using QR codes from seed generation to transaction signing. You can power the device using 3 AAA batteries, so you don't even have to plug it into the wall for power. You can easily use it with Sparrow Wallet for PC or Nunchuck on mobile, and you can dial it into the right level of security and complexity that you choose. If you want a simple setup, just use 12 words and single signature. If you want passphrases, easy. If you want to add multi-sig or co-signing features, you've got those too. So go to coinkite.com, use code Livera to get 10% off on your cold card or other devices and level up your self-custody today. Yeah, interesting to see. But I think that's also what we're seeing now, where different, let's say, Bitcoin-focused apps are trying to build in like swap services, right, in the background, or this kind of thing. Like probably Aqua is a good example where, yes, it's a liquid LBTC, liquid Bitcoin-based wallet, but in the background they've got like swaps for other chains to swap in your Tether from Tron and whatever else. And then I guess on your lend side, because you're doing USDT, so talk to us about that. Are you doing like Tron Tether there, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, so we're only supporting like the 2 blockchains, which would be Ethereum and Tron. And we chose those because we just didn't want to start supporting all the other blockchains, because we really want to have a push for Taproot assets, Liquid possibly, and RGB. So more of kind of closer to the Bitcoin kind of ecosystem than the other ones. And if that gets taken off a little bit higher, then we'd probably want to drop off like Ethereum and Tron,
right?
And focus on those other ones more.
Yeah. But I totally get you. Like it's an uphill battle right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think we're starting. I would say it's fair to say we're seeing some green shoots in terms of the liquid Tether side of things. Like we're starting to see more people who actually truly do use that. But it's still early days and still not at the level of Tron Tether or Ethereum Tether. So I totally understand that side of things. Talk to us about the lend. What we're talking about, the lend product. What are the terms there? Give us the overview. Like what like what's the loan period? What's the rate? What's the LTV? Just give us the high level stats there.
Yeah, so high level stats is so we're offering anywhere from 6 to 12%. So the higher amounts obviously get the 6%, the lower amounts get 12, and so anywhere in the middle could probably get around the 8 or 9%.
Gotcha. So
We do
just to be clear, the 6%, how much do you have to borrow to get that rate?
over 150,000.
Gotcha. Okay. I
Yeah,
mean that, but
yeah,
6% for USD
yeah,
lending actually is pretty competitive compared to what's out
yeah.
there.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be very competitive in the market, especially kind of in the region, to hopefully get as much market share as we can. And we feel I think 6% is a good deal. I think
Yeah.
there's other people that are trying to lower to that rate. But yeah, so for us, we're pretty much 12-month term as well. We are going to work on a rollover too as well. So if they wanted to extend it, then it would just be a rollover with a fee. So it'd just be like, how long did you want to extend it for? And we'd extend it for another 12 months with a fee. You would
Gotcha.
still have the same percentage rate, right, until you paid it off. Our LTV is just 50%. We do have 60%. We don't recommend it in the platform because we just say, hey, do your management services. If you understand your finances and stuff like that, you can select 60, but default is 50. And so
Yeah.
we feel that's a safe spot.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
where are the liquidations and how does that part work?
Yeah, so the liquidation is so if you use 50% LTV, so we'll do it all the way down to about I think it's about like 92%. So as soon as 92% is hit, and then we'll do the liquidation. We're working
Gotcha.
a
But
little
you have
bit to
margin
make it,
call levels before that,
yeah,
right?
yeah, margin calls. We have a bunch of notifications too, where it's like yellow, and then going into red, and then right when you're about to get liquidated, we'll start firing a bunch of emails and notifications.
Gotcha. And so just to understand the product then, who are the target markets here? Like, are we talking Vietnam or C or Southeast Asia or around the world? Who is eligible to borrow against a Bitcoin?
Every, everyone,
Right. So you're just
everyone's,
going,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we're going everyone, but we do have a little bit more marketing in Southeast Asia, just because again, we're trying to still kind of just encompass just in Southeast Asia to be like, hey, these are the products, this is the financial services that you could use through us, right? With Lend, you can tie it in with mobile if you want. Eventually, we're going to put it into the mobile side. Right now, it's just a web platform, and so that's what we're just trying to target. But anyone can use the Lend product in the world. It's just that because we're in Southeast Asia, we have a lot of the communities here, so we kind of talk to them a little bit more and figure out like what's their interest and how they would want to do the loans. And it just seems like it's a little bit more of a closer knit with us because we've been here for so long, right? With boots on the ground.
Gotcha. And then now, okay, so we spoke about how on the Lend side, the USDT availability is Ethereum Tether and Tron Tether, just because that's the most popular. Do you also offer like actually just fiat wire or fiat Swift or something like that, or is it actually just stablecoin only?
Yeah, it's only stablecoin only.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I'm curious because this is something that seems to come up when, as an example, you talk about international banks. For example, a lot of international banks don't like having American customers because of the regulation and the compliance, right? Because of whatever FATCA and FBAR or whatever these
Hmm.
other regulations are. And this is like a famous thing. Even like Swiss banks don't want to have US customers. So how is it that you're doing that then?
Yeah, sorry. So I forgot to say like we're not servicing US customers because
Okay,
of
gotcha. So it's
because of
kind of
those regulations.
global
So
minus US. Okay, yeah.
minus US, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, fair enough. And then yeah, certain jurisdictions are just seen as sort of high risk. Again, I'm against AML and sanctions laws in
Yeah.
principle, but this is the world we live in. Unfortunately, or in America, it's called BSA, Bank Secrecy Act,
Hmm.
but basically, and Patriot Act, arguably as well,
Yeah.
kind of in there. But yeah, so I guess these are some of the trade-offs, right? And of course, there's different. We have to think about the different trade-offs of the different options out there, right? Because
Hmm.
yes, on one side there are some of the products that allow the hodler to still hold maybe one key out of the quorum, so like an Unchained or like a hodl Lend or Debify or Firefish or Lava, like some of these options out there, and then you've got more just deposit your coins with us and we'll lend you fiat, right? And there's a spectrum of different options there. Some of those include things like, hey, no rehypothecation, or you have a better better assurances that there's no rehypothecation, but maybe you pay a bit more on the interest rate there, or you're it might be a slightly more clunky experience. The custodial products maybe they can offer, in many cases, slightly better interest rates, maybe a slightly slicker UX, but you're taking a bit more in terms of custodial risk and theoretically rehypothecation. So how do you see that? Do you see that as a fair analysis? Where would you agree or disagree, or where would you add anything to that?
Yeah, there's going to be some products with kind of that. Yeah, I guess people would call it like trust me, bro. We don't want to be in kind of that camp. So we've kind of for us, we've kind of split it up a little bit, where obviously like the user gets a key, we have a key. We have this. I don't think it's a unique solution, but I think there's other companies that are doing it today. Is where we'd give it to a trusted, well-known third party. So we already have partnerships with like BitGo and Kobo. So those would be two of the key holders that we have, and then you could select if it's BitGo or Kobo. So Kobo is going to be
So in this model, actually, the user is holding one of the keys.
Yes, the user is holding one of the. Yep, they're holding one of the keys, where they have a couple options, right? So one option is they can generate it. It'd be held up in kind of the browser, right? And it gets encrypted, and then they'll hold it with a password.
Well, I'd be a little bit wary about browser key security though, but go on.
Yeah, but it's encrypted, and then if they lose a password, then we can't recover it from them. So that's where kind of BitGo and Kobo would come in. We have a key. They could also have, so we also have a particular software where it's called Neutron Guard. So you could download the app, you can pretty much create your keys, and then you can load your public key into the actual lending thing. So you would say, here's my public key, here's our key, and then here's BitGo's key, and then we would create the multi-sig. So now you have full control offside of our platform onto an app that's going to obviously be open source pretty soon. And so it's called Neutron Guard, and you could use that if you wanted to. And then the next
just to be clear, this is like a 2 of 3 multi-sig lend setup, or how does it?
Yeah,
like as in on chain is a 2 of 3, but the user holds one key, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So they can have the user generated key. They can use our new Neutron Guard app, which would also generate the keys on their phone. And then the third one is we're eventually going to allow them just to plug into a hardware wallet and just say, here's your public key, and then if they want to sign it, then they would sign it from their hardware wallet.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so that's so. But to be clear, that's a future option, not currently.
That's a future option, not currently yet. Yeah. Soon.
And then, do you currently just offer like a full custodial option, or no?
We don't. No.
Okay,
so we don't want
either the browser option or this Neutron Guard, which is a phone app key kind of thing for now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, for now.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. Okay, so yeah, that's interesting then, because because when you first explained it to me, I first thought, it's like a fully custodial thing, but actually it sounds like it's better than that. Actually, you actually do have no rehypothecation on the coins, obviously. So that's actually a good step.
Yeah, and that was kind of the purpose of what we really wanted to build, right? Because we wanted to follow in the footsteps of, we're trying to move over, like Neutron itself is trying to move over to non-custodial products while still having custodial products. So our business plan was to make sure that if you want to do custodial, you could do custodial. If you don't want to, then we have a suite of non-custodial products that you can do. And this was kind of our first kind of move into that. So lend is pretty much, there's no rehypothecation of your Bitcoin. You can see the actual multi-sig of where your Bitcoin is, and it's not going to move because obviously you'll have a key, we have a key, and then the trusted third party has a key. And so as soon as that's paid off, it automatically shoots back to the user.
Gotcha. And so then when the price of Bitcoin drops, and like we're talking about margin calls and liquidation, actually what's happening in the back end is Neutron has to coordinate with either BitGo or Kobo to do that liquidation in that case. So let's say the price drops, really quickly. Again, none of us wants this to happen, but again, just to understand what is the failure scenario for the user, it would be like if the price drops really quickly, they are not able to deposit new collateral or pay off the loan. Then at that point, Neutron has to coordinate with BitGo or Kobo and Kobo to sell the collateral and liquidate that user. That's that's the model, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's the model. Yeah. So we're still at risk too, right? Because it does take a little bit of time to get that collateral to get liquidated. But we look at it as if it ever is going to get liquidated, because we are a Bitcoin company, that's the risk that we're willing to take, right? So we're willing to take on the Bitcoin. And even if it does drop to a lower price point, if it, obviously catastrophic drops all the way down to, say they borrowed at 100,000, it drops to like 50,000, we'll still take that 50,000 in Bitcoin, hold it, and then wait for it to go up.
Gotcha. And then in terms of the funding side of things, like, because different platforms, I'm trying to understand how yours works. Are there people who want to come to you and say, hey, I want to lend out fiat? Or do you have a bank who you're partnering with, like in terms of funding and capital source for the loans?
Yeah, a lot of it is private capital, some VC investment firms too as well that we talk to. And so we looked at it and said, here's our product, this is what we're doing. And so they were interested in it. So a lot of the good VCs that we already had in our investment rounds were helping with us with this. So that's kind of helped a lot, and just kind of showing them how it works. It actually also helped because the market is actually moving forward with a lot of the lend products. I think everyone's doing it now, right?
Yeah, it's
and so
very
it's helped
hot.
a lot.
I think
Yeah.
it's very. I think it's. I've been saying this before, but it seems like the number one hot topic is the treasury companies, and number two is lending, right? Like there's
Yes.
so many people who are interested in lending recently, both on the borrower side and the lending side. So it's kind of interesting we're seeing this, and this is definitely what I'm hearing from many people who I talk to in the industry. So it's heating up. But I do find it interesting that you've got as low as 6% over 150K. Like that's actually pretty low. Like I'm surprised you managed to find people willing to lend you fiat that cheap, you know?
Yeah, like what we call it is like a phase, right? Like I think we have a certain phase of, it's kind of like the discount kind of era
Gotcha.
where it's
Okay.
like we'll give you
The
this
intro
amount
rate.
if
Intro rate.
the intro rate. Yeah, yeah. And if you stay long enough, we may be able to keep it around and keep the investors a little bit happy, even though it's super low. But I think as long as we can get a lot of the AUM under, and we're issuing out a lot of the loans, the investors would be happy, right? Because the interest rate, although it's not as aggressive as the other ones that they're not collecting it, but if there is a lot of interest and a lot of people are doing it, usually that 6% we will try to keep. But it's an introductory phase. Yes, there's probably going to be a little bit more of an increase as probably more loans are coming in, and there are a lot of loans that are coming in now. And so our block is almost kind of filled up, and that's why I call it. We call it like the block. So once the block is filled up, then we got to go back to investments and say, hey, this whole block is completely filled up. Could you give us another block?
Yeah.
We need more capital. And this is, proof that here's all the actual loans that are on chain. You can see them for yourself. And would we be able to get it again at 6%? And so that's us negotiating back with them again. And hopefully they will give us 6%. And so we are in talks right now to try to get another block for obviously the 6%. The third block, probably not. We'll probably not get 6%, but we'll try to get a round under the double digits for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of the big question, because that's been, I would say, when I talk to like Bitcoiners and hodlers who want to borrow against their stack, some of the pain points have been, oh, look, man, like the loans are only 1 year. I would really like more than 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And the rates are a bit high, right? Because historically it's been like 14, 15%, like that kind of level. And so those are probably the two main blockers that I can think of for a lot of people. And over time, I think these things will get kind of solved, or over time as Bitcoin grows, there'll be more interest in these kinds of things. But that's where we're at for now. I'm curious, in terms of the use of these loans, is it generally going to be people who, like, are we talking like hodler who wants to borrow against some coins to pay his living expenses, or like person who wants to lever up on Bitcoin and borrow some fiat to then buy Bitcoin? Or borrow Bitcoin for some kind of commercial use case? What are you seeing? Where has the interest been now?
Yeah, it's been probably both with the latter ones that you're talking about. So a lot of them taking out the loan and then buying more Bitcoin with it. Kind of, we call it like a little bit more the degen kind of side. But we can't say like that's their money, right? If they want to do that, they want to lever up, then that's up to them. We do see a lot of people wanting to buy commercial, like real estate, which is really interesting. Not too interesting, but I think it's probably pretty much the norm, is that people want to buy other assets with it. And so we see a lot of commercial buying. That's why there's a lot of people asking for rollovers, because they're saying, I'm buying this property. I need more than 12 months to be able to do it. Could you offer a rollover? And we do offer rollovers. It's just when it comes to that point, it's just a fee, and then you can roll over for another 12 months. And so we see a lot of that. So it's a lot of commercial building, buying other assets. An interesting one that we see now that is coming in a lot is people are buying it to buy the Bitcoin treasury companies.
Yeah.
A lot of that is coming in.
Yeah, I think that's that seems to be the play, because it's kind of that's like the number one and number two hot topics, right? So it's kind of, it was only natural that we were going to see that kind of practice. Of course, it depends how things go this cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the obvious comparisons, everyone's going to be like, oh, FTX, BlockFi, Celsius,
Mm-hmm.
etc., Three Arrows Capital, whatever. But yeah, I'm curious how you're seeing that then. Like, are you hearing a lot of people talking about that, worried about those things, or right now it's like, nah, full steam ahead, we're in the bull market? What do you think?
Yeah, like I think it is okay to now because I don't think we're actually fully into the bull market yet. I think in a couple more months, I think we'll actually really see kind of, what the bull market really presents. But I think we're just at the start of it. I think it's a good time to do the loans. Obviously I'm going to get a lot of, maybe, bad kickback on it, but I think now is better to do it than at the top, right? And I think that's where a lot of people are going to fall suspect to it, where say Bitcoin goes all the way up to 250,000, then they're like, now I want to take out a loan.
Yeah,
I
then it's
think
a
it's a
big
little,
risk. I would not.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a very risky, right? So I would say do it while it's mid. I would say now. Obviously, know your financials and understand how you're going to do your finance. But I think now would be a very good time to do the lend and then do into treasury stocks and wherever else. Because once it does go up, then you would want to exit then, right? Not when everyone is kind of FOMOing in and as institutions and countries are buying it and then there's going to be a catastrophic fall, right? Because I think that's just going to happen. That's just in Bitcoin's nature, right? As much as people say that it's not going to happen, people need to take profits. That's what happens, right? It's not a correction. It's just people saying it's Bitcoin is 200 or $300,000. There are people that are going to take profit. People have responsibility. People have lives to do, and not everyone is like a hardcore Bitcoin maxi like you or I, where we would like forever keep it, right? And just loan against it. There are other people that just do have normal lives outside of Bitcoin and want to take care of their families. And maybe they feel that being cash heavy rich and having a house is just their normal life, right? But getting to that point, maybe is exiting Bitcoin at 300,000. I don't know, right? But I think that's just, there's always going to be different groups that do that. That's why I think it's just kind of you let the person decide, right? That's their money. If they're in it for the ride, great. And if it changes their life, that's even better, right? I think that's the main goal, right? Is that everyone gets out of kind of the rat race. Everyone has a very good life for their families, and if Bitcoin is able to do that, and we're able to provide the products to be able to do that for them, I think that's the biggest goal.
Yeah, and I think it's not even a zero or one. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure there are long-term, hodlers, and I mean historically that's been what's happened, right? In these cycles,
Mm-hmm.
if you sort of look on chain, look at the like kind of Checkmate and some of these other
Mm-hmm.
on-chain analysts are looking and they're saying, well, look, every time these cycles have been, it's like the smart money and the whales who effectively they sell the top, right? They kind of
Mm-hmm.
prices run up so hard that they're like, all right, it's time to take some fiat, and then they are some of those whales. Maybe they are, yeah, maybe they're trying to buy whatever fancy things, whether it's Lambos or yachts, or some of them are like, no, I want some fiat because I want to buy back the bottom or whatever. And that's historically what has happened, right? Whether we like it
Yeah.
or not, or whether we, it's. I think online there's this kind of like, oh yeah, I'm hardcore, never sell, I'm staunch, but I'm sure there's a ton of hodlers out there. Maybe they're not as plugged into the scene or whatever, or they're just not as public about it, but they are selling or doing these things. It's just that it's not as publicized.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so anyway, tell us a little bit about like the remittance side of things, right? Like a few years ago, that was also part of, your story, your messaging. Are you still into that, or is it more now the focus is more about like the wallet, the lend, the API aspects of it?
Yeah, we're a little bit more focused on like the APIs and the integration for institutions and the wallet and the lend. So we're kind of more focused on the word that we like to use is kind of like open finance, right? Where open finance is like anyone's allowed to come in, right? As long as you have a mobile phone, you have access to finance, right? Where closed finance is all what we call is like the traditional side, right? You got to sign up, get KYC. If you're allowed, you're allowed, right? And so we're focused now on that. We still do the remittance side, like we still have that open because there's a lot of people, funnily enough, getting paid in Southeast Asia that want to just get, some of the money out. So they'll send it into our mobile app. And then once you send the Bitcoin in, you can send it out to all the Southeast Asian countries here. So Malaysia and
Gotcha.
Indonesia are pretty very active. I think there's a lot of
Right. In
contractors out
terms of,
there.
and are we talking here about like Vietnamese people in those countries, or just like anyone in those countries,
Just
kind of?
anyone, yeah, because
Yeah.
we service everyone in Southeast Asia, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the uptick that we're seeing now is from Malaysia and Indonesia, where
Yeah.
they'll send in the Bitcoin and they get paid in Malaysia ringgit or Indonesian rupiah just to pay their bills. But they'll keep the rest
Gotcha.
of it in
Yeah.
Bitcoin, right? So there are a lot of contractors that just say, hey, I just get paid in Bitcoin and I just need to sell a percentage
Right.
to be able
Just
to
to
pay
pay
my
bills.
bills.
Yeah.
Just to pay bills, yeah. And so they said our mobile app fits perfectly for that, and that's where our remittance kind of comes in. And so we've kept that on, and people just continually to use it, and it is growing quite a bit, because I think just more contractors will just get paid in Bitcoin.
Yeah. Fascinating to see this. Like, more and more people are just starting to use it just because it is just a better technology, right? It's just on
Yeah,
an app. You can just download
yeah,
it and do this thing, right? Now, I guess you still have to KYC though, right? Like to use the app, but it's, once you've done that, you're at least able to more seamlessly transact across the world.
correct. Yeah, that's the unfortunate part, right? Because what I always call it is, as soon as you get into fiat, you got to pay by fiat rules, right? And that's just you can't get around it, right? So, and that's why we kind of wanted to move a little bit more away from kind of the remittance angle, because a lot of people were just saying, well, I don't want to do the KYC, I just want to use the Bitcoin and stuff like that. And it's funny because that narrative started changing when they're saying, well, I'm getting paid all in this Bitcoin and I really need to get back into my fiat currency. And so
Yeah,
they didn't want
right.
to go to an exchange and they want to do this exchange stuff. And they're saying, can I just send it to a mobile wallet, save some of it, and then just have like say 20% of it just kind of cash out for
That
bills.
you're just
And
saving
that's
into Bitcoin, yeah.
yeah, and that's where we kind of fit in. It was a lot easier for them because now they're just saying, oh, I just once I sign up on the KYC, I can send it to myself or I can send it to another friend or family outside of say Malaysia or Indonesia. So it's been
Gotcha.
very easy for them. Kind of, it's like a little bit of like a Swiss Army knife in a remittance way for them, right? Because they can get their own fiat, but they can also send it to, say, Indonesia or Vietnam if they have other family members in there too as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, the other thing we're starting to see more is, sadly, we're seeing more and more of this, the KYC kind of creep or choke
Hmm.
that we're all facing. Everyone faces this.
Mhm.
And some people's banks are like asking them the questions if they get like a transfer and saying, "Hey, this money you just received, who is it from? Show me the invoice." Da 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 da. Like a million questions. Are you running into those issues, or are your customers running into those issues?
We're starting to see that slowly. Yes. It was kind of funnily enough, just last week, Malaysia held up a few transactions because of that, and we don't know why. All of a sudden, it just flipped a switch. It was perfectly going, perfectly fine, and then as of last week, they kind of stopped and halted payments for more KYC.
Yeah.
And we provided all of the KYC, and it's the same thing that you said. They're like, "What is this amount for? Why is it going?" And we have to go back to them and say, "It's literally $100. Like, what is that going to do? The guy's just trying to pay bills. His purpose of getting the $100 out is maybe paying either an electrical bill or paying something for his family, right?" And he
Yeah.
even says in the description, like, it's for family. It's going to, his cousin or his sister, right? And it's $100. I don't understand, like, the KYC kind of chokehold where it's like you have to make sure every single dime and dollar has to be recorded when the guy's literally telling you what he's using it for. But that still isn't good enough for some reason because obviously the source was Bitcoin and now it's converted from Bitcoin to fiat. And that's where the choking point is,
Yeah, which
unfortunately.
is unfortunate, and this is kind of all around the world. I wish we had enough momentum to kind of fight
Hmm.
back against all this AML sanctions,
Yeah.
BSA, all this stuff. We don't have it yet, but we've got to start somewhere, and
Hmm.
slowly, maybe this is like a 10, 15-year project that if we built up enough people who are like angry about AML and sanctions and all this stuff, because it is so frustrating for a lot of people, both everyday users and businesses, um, and yeah, we're just kind of it's quite frustrating for many people. But this is again, unfortunately, that's the reality that we're in. But look, on the bright side, though, we have Bitcoin, we have these opportunities. More and more people are coming to Bitcoin and learning about it. And I think this lending thing is also quite interesting for a lot of people, whether that's because they want to borrow against Bitcoin to not sell the Bitcoin and therefore pay their bills and whatever, or two, it's because maybe they want some sustainable form of leverage, not like don't go degen on it,
Hmm.
but if you're doing like a small percent of your portfolio, that can make sense depending on your income, your net worth, your various conditions, how many dependents you have, all these different things that weigh into it. But it can make sense. So I think we're going to see, a continuation here. So I guess we've spoken about a lot of things. I guess, as you mentioned, it's like one big theme from this podcast really is that Vietnam is actually turning around in terms of the stance on Bitcoin, which is actually quite notable given the stance in past years. So now it's kind of turning around, and now we're seeing entrepreneurs and investors really take to using Bitcoin and, okay, yeah, some stablecoins too. Where does that all end up? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it's, as much as I say it's a paradigm shift, I think, for the country, because it's another leapfrog, right? Because I think Vietnam has been put into this area of kind of like it's a dictatorship, right? The North won the war, right? And now it's complete dictatorship and you can't do anything, everything's capital controls. And now they're kind of easing up on that. And I think Vietnam is now choosing the side of a little bit more democracy and kind of the path of China. And so I think that allows more for a lot of the growth, and kind of they want to show the world Vietnam can be a larger kind of country just without exports, right? They want to be able to provide other services. And so I think a lot of people are getting noticed to that. And that's what Vietnam is trying to do, right? And I've always, when I came here, obviously I'm Vietnamese myself. And that's one of the reasons why I came here, was to kind of just improve kind of where I came from, and also improve the country a little bit more with a little bit more education and why they do need this as a service. And I think having that hope and kind of, I've been here for a long time, for I think over 6 years now. It's finally turning around. And I think that's a very positive light. And I think a lot of people in other countries could probably see that too as well, right? So I think it's one person that steps out the door and then everyone else will start following, right? Because it's kind of the same thing that Michael Saylor said, is kind of, I put the playbook out there so that everyone can start doing it. And as soon as everyone starts doing it, everyone just kind of follows that line, right? And says, oh, this is the correct path, right? And I think that's what Vietnam wants to do in Southeast Asia. So that's why the stance is changing. A lot of the stuff where people can use and spend Bitcoin is obviously going to be a little bit more open in Vietnam. I think that's going to open up a lot of doors, a lot of investments, a lot of obviously expats coming in a little bit more, doing more business from all over the world. And I think it's just going to be a net benefit for both sides, right? Vietnam gets what it wants, which is a little bit more of a bigger global stage, higher exports, velocity of payments will be a lot faster. And I think the country overall will just change. And I think a lot of people do come here now to kind of work, obviously, kind of like the vibe coding and, kind of everything else that they do, and kind of like the beach that we have here, which is called Da Nang. I think you were there too, as well as
a couple
at our
years
first
ago,
conference.
Lightning Con.
Yeah.
I think it was early 2023, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. 2023. That area has blew up with a bunch of expats that do a bunch of businesses there, right? There's a lot of vibe coders there as well. And that it's grown into a huge hub for a lot of people, right? So it's like Thailand and Bali and now Da Nang. Yeah, I think overall, I think it's a very good net positive. I think Vietnam does see the potential and what Bitcoin could do for the country, along with stablecoins as well. And so I think as soon as that is shown in January of 2026, I think there's going to be a lot of other countries following that suit as well. So I think, yeah, we'll have a very unique time in 2026. Hopefully not the bear market, but I think everything else going forward, I think going for a Bitcoin side of things, where we wish and hope that a lot of things will change, kind of the usage and how that's being reciprocated will be a lot different.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for joining me. And listeners, check it out. I think it's neutron.me. And you can find Albert on X at subnetmask. Albert, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Stephan.